episode of Old Joe's Reminiscence. Two astronauts and a chimpanzee roaming a future Earth where apes rule the world encounter an ape-run settlement where human males are forced to fight each other for entertainment. After encountering so many difficulties with the first episode of this series, I had made a decision that I would not continue reviewing the 1974 Planet of the Apes TV show. However, due to overwhelming viewership of that first review, I was compelled to reevaluate my rather hasty choice, and I have decided to carry on as long as the future episodes remain interesting and channel viewership warrants my renewed efforts. The Gladiators opens with Verdon, Galen, and Burke walking through Malibu Creek State Park. They stop to rest, and we hear Urko in a voiceover.
This is where they must be.
We cut to Urko pointing to a place on a map. The original 1968 Planet of the Apes film was set on the East Coast. Here, I seem to recognize Southern California and the Baja Peninsula. Looking at a present-day map, noting the location of those islands and the outcropping around the Vandenberg Space Force Base, Urko must be pointing to Los Angeles. He tells his underling to inform the prefects in the area to be on the lookout for the two astronauts and the chimp named Galen. The gorilla, Jason, is played by Pat Ranella.
Pat Ranella was born Pasquale Joseph Ranella Jr. in Chicago on March 24, 1929. He started out as a nightclub singer in Los Angeles. He played a minor role on television in an episode of The Alaskans that aired in June of 1960. He was cast in a stage play that opened in West Hollywood on November 17 of 1961. Then he made his motion picture debut a mere 4 days later with the release of the film X-15. Pat had a recurring role on 8 episodes of the new Phil Silvers show. He is probably best known for his portrayal of the character John Ross in the 1968 hit film Bullitt. He appeared twice on the Planet of the Apes series and 5 times on Mannix. Pat played Marco Polo's father Niccolo on the 1982 sci-fi series, Voyagers. He retired from acting after appearing on a 1991 episode of The Father Dowling Mysteries. Pat Ranella died on November 9, 2012 at the age of 83.
Urko tells Jason that he wants the astronauts brought back alive, unless they try to escape.
I expect them to try. Understood?
Understood, sir.
Meanwhile, Galen has gathered some fruit to share with his friends. Burke tries some of the fruit that Galen calls an oper. He says it looks like a bomb, feels like a banana, and tastes like an orange.
Must be a mutation.
Burke comments on their location being somewhere north of San Francisco, based on the position of the sun and the compass readings. That contradicts where Urko placed them on his map. Was there a change in the magnetic field? A shift in Earth's axial tilt? Or did the graphics team who created Urko's wall map simply goof and go too far south? Whatever the reason, Burke feels that they should be eating apples and pears instead of this tropical fruit. Alan Verdon is lost in thought about the tiny computer disk he had salvaged from their disabled spaceship. He's convinced that it holds the answer to the two getting back to their own time. He just needs to find a computer. And fat chance of that happening. They're interrupted by the sound of a fight nearby, and they go to investigate. They hide behind some bushes and watch as a couple of stuntmen duke it out. In the close-ups, one of those two looks familiar. He's Tolar, played by TV tough guy and bodybuilder William Smith.
William Smith was born in Columbia, Missouri on March 24, 1933. The descendant of Kit Carson and Daniel Boone spent the first few years of his life on the family ranch. After moving to Southern California, William began playing small parts in films. The first was an uncredited appearance as an unnamed boy in the 1942 film The Ghost of Frankenstein. William began bodybuilding and weightlifting, and he studied foreign languages at UCLA. He was a translator for the Air Force, where he also earned weightlifting awards. He played Joe Riley in 56 episodes of the NBC Western drama Laredo. He is probably best known as Falconetti in Rich Man Poor Man. He was easily recognized as a tough guy or villain, and he appeared in hundreds of productions. William Smith continued working into his 80s, and he died at the age of 88 on July 5, 2021.
With hundreds of credits to his name, I just knew he looked familiar. He was in a Search TV episode I reviewed a few years ago. Now, why on earth would Burke jump into a fight against that muscular strongman? Well, they were fighting against each other, but now the two are teamed up 2-1 against Burke. Naturally, Verdon enters the fray, and while he's fighting, he loses his precious computer disk. The man Verdon is fighting is Dalton, played by Mark Singer.
Mark Singer was born in Vancouver, British Columbia on January 29, 1948. The son of a symphony conductor father and a concert pianist mother, they lived in New York for a short time. He grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas, and later on the family moved to Oregon. While a young boy, he was impressed by a stage production of a Shakespeare play that his father took him to see. In his junior year of high school, Mark was asked to fill in when a role was suddenly left vacant in a school play. He has appeared in about 100 productions, most notably as Dar in The Beastmaster and as Mike Donovan in the 1980s V series. Mark is trained in the classics, has a black belt in Kung Fu, and has produced in addition to acting. Mark is still active in Hollywood with several productions being released in 2024.
The chimpanzee Galen hears a horse coming and he shouts a warning to his companions. The three run off together. A prefect approaches on horseback. He knows those other two humans. They're a father and son who are in some sort of training. Prefect Barlow is played by John Hoyt.
John MacArthur Hoysrat was born on October 5, 1905 in Bronxville, New York. He was a direct descendant of Pilgrim Francis Cook, who arrived on the Mayflower. The Yale graduate worked as a history teacher at the Groton School for a few years. John Hoysrat performed comedy routines and celebrity impressions in nightclubs in the late 1920s. He made his Broadway debut in 1931 and he joined Orson Welles' Mercury Theatre in 1937. After a stint in the Army during World War II, John moved to Hollywood and shortened his name. Using the name John Hoyt, he made his film debut as Colonel Paul Meister in the 1946 film OSS. One of his most notable roles was as Ross, the undercover Martian on the Twilight Zone episode, Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? Another role of note was his portrayal of Dr. Philip Boyce in the original pilot for Star Trek. He played 6 different German officers in 7 episodes of the Hogan's Heroes television series, and he was Grandpa Stanley Koniski on 82 episodes of Gimme a Break, which was his last screen role. John Hoyt passed away on September 15, 1991 at the age of 85.
I didn't recognize him because of his ape makeup, but his name hit me when I saw it. Hoyt was the ship's doctor on the very first Star Trek pilot. Verdon realizes that he no longer has that computer disk. Ignoring Burke's warnings, he's going back for it. The astronauts and their ape companion arrive back at the clearing just in time to see Prefect Barlow stoop to pick up that disk. He pockets it, mounts his horse, and he heads off. His two humans jog after the horse and its rider. Despite valid arguments by both Burke and Galen against going after the disc, Verdon is determined to get it back. We cut to an unscripted scene of the gorilla Jason stopping to get a drink of water, and a bit of information from a human who's driving an ox cart. Jason rides off in a hurry. We see a scene that had been skipped earlier of Jason riding through the woods on his mission. Back on script, the three friends are sneaking into the human settlement in a day-for-night scene. Galen decides to go into the prefect's house alone to get the disc for his human friends. Meanwhile, the men hear a horse whinny nearby.
Horses.
They decide to prepare for a hasty getaway, just in case things go south for Galen. Inside, Galen gains the trust of the prefect, who offers to make them some drinks. That's when Galen spots the astronaut's computer disk lying on the desk. They make some small talk, and Galen tries to get the disk, but he has no luck. Meanwhile, back outside, Verdon and Burke are creeping around a corral full of horses. They intend to sneak up behind the gorilla guard. Back inside, Prefect Barlow is entertaining his new guest. He has a theory about humans.
Take 50 humans, put them in a room with plenty of pots of color and brushes, give them enough time, and eventually they'll duplicate every masterpiece ever painted.
Prefect Barlow's theory parallels our infinite monkey theorem, wherein a monkey hitting keys at random on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time will almost surely type any given text, including the complete works of William Shakespeare. It seems that the prefect is a collector of artifacts. He shows Galen an ancient club. The workmanship and the metallurgy are quite advanced, but it would be too inefficient to be of use in combat. Now, I've played a few rounds of golf in my days, but I'm not familiar enough with the clubs to identify them with just a glance. I'm guessing it's a 5-iron. Meanwhile, outside, Verdon and Burke drag away an unconscious sentry. Burke confiscates the ape's rifle, and they open the corral gate. Galen and the prefect exit the older man's house on their way to find overnight lodging for Galen. They hear some horses whinnying.
What? Shh.
We cut to the astronauts leading 3 horses through the corral gate, just as 3 gorillas, the prefect, and Galen arrive. The prefect surmises that these are the 2 humans that Tolar and his son had encountered.
Of course, the 2 outlaws Tolar saw. Put them in the cage.
Act 2 opens with the gorilla Jason tossing away the outer skin of an oper. He gently rubs the head of his horse, which struck me as odd for a gorilla to be kind toward an animal. Verdon and Burke are on the dirt floor of a cell. Verdon tries to talk to a group of humans who are gathered nearby, but none of those bystanders responds to him. Tolar and Dalton approach. Tolar reaches down and throws dirt in Burke's face. Then he walks away. Meanwhile, Galen asks Prefect Barlow what will happen to the prisoners.
Why should you care? They're only human.
Prefect Barlow takes his guests to the cage where Galen's friends are being held. When he asks which one, the guard indicates Burke. Burke is taken from the cell and escorted away. Nearby, Tolar and his son are roughhousing. The prefect and Galen approach. Tolar is ready, but not his son Dalton.
Not yet.
Why?
I don't think
It's his stomach. His stomach is not good today, sir.
Very well. Not today.
Thank you, sir.
Based on the episode title, we can guess there's going to be a fight with the astronauts. Is Dalton reluctant because these humans had come to his aid the previous day? The arena where the games take place was the last set that remained from the Ape Village in the 1968 Planet of the Apes film. Prefect Barlow and Galen climb to the prefect's box high above the arena. Barlow introduces their champion, Tolar.
Welcome to Tolar!
And then his challenger, Burke, who is brought in by armed guerrilla guards. Dalton sits with the crowd, uneasy. At the start command, Tolar starts throwing Burke around the arena, but Burke gets in a few hits of his own. Meanwhile, Jason arrives at the prefect's house. When he realizes that the prefect isn't at home, he follows the noise of the crowd to the arena. Burke begins using a few self-defense moves that are unknown to these primitives. He eventually knocks the wind out of Tolar. The prefect throws a sword into the arena, and the crowd yells for Burke to finish him. Burke tosses the sword to the ground. Jason arrives at the arena as the crowd rushes Burke. Galen makes his way to Burke, and the two escape. We're back in Prefect Barlow's house for a scene that differs from the final draft script. They added dialogue to describe some action from that cut scene. Jason admonishes Prefect Barlow for his lack of control and for losing an important prisoner.
I had no way of knowing they were important until you came.
We cut to Dalton pouring water from a well bucket. He enters the house to offer his father a drink. Frankly, the way it was presented in Act 2, I was beginning to wonder if one of the gorillas hadn't shot Tolar.
The dead have no need of light.
He considers himself dead, though, disgraced by Burke.
A man without honor should not live.
We cut to Jason interrogating Verdon.
Where did your friends go? Where is their meeting place?
There isn't a meeting place, I told you.
Prefect Barlow puts a stop to it, but Jason threatens the elder's authority.
Enjoy your title, Prefect Barlow. You will no longer have it once I make my report.
Verdon thanks the prefect for coming to his aid.
Prefect, thanks.
Meanwhile, Galen and Burke visit the home of Tolar and Dalton to ask for their help to free Verdon. Dalton agrees to help them, but Tolar refuses.
He's a stranger. We owe him nothing.
Back in Prefect Barlow's house, Jason is writing his scathing report to Urko. The prefect enters and explains to Jason that some men do not respond to force. He goes on to explain the need for the humans to witness a death to satisfy their need for violence.
Violence, hostility, aggression. My way keeps them from...
Wait a minute. I'm such an idiot.
Then Jason gets an idea. Let them have the other prisoner. Urko wasn't expecting them to come back alive anyway, right?
Officially, yes.
Back at Tolar and Dalton's house, Burke has described the time when men ruled the earth.
There really was such a time.
I was there.
What happened?
I don't know.
They hear a horse coming. Galen and Burke hide. Prefect Barlow comes in and he inquires about Tolar before announcing that there will be another game that night under the torches. Dalton will fight the other prisoner.
And this time there will be a death.
We open the final act in the cell with Verdon. Prefect Barlow comes to talk with him. Somehow he knows about the two strangers' claims to be from another time. Jason must have told him that. He asks Verdon if it's better then.
It's different.
Oh, I'm sorry you ever came to my village.
Verdon says they had no choice but to come there after the prefect picked up the disc. Meanwhile, outside, Burke and Galen are creeping up on the cell where Verdon is being held. They see Prefect Barlow as he exits. Burke tells Galen to stay put while he runs off to get Dalton to help. When he enters the house, neither Dalton nor Tolar are there. We join Dalton kneeling over his mother's grave. Tolar joins him. They discuss Dalton's reluctance to kill. Then we cut to the prefect's house where Barlow reinforces Tolar's words. Dalton tells the prefect that killing is wrong.
I think the games are wrong.
He refuses to fight in the games.
I'm not going to fight.
For rebelling, Barlow goes to the door and reports Dalton for breaking curfew.
Sergeant! This human has broken curfew! That's all I need.
Back at Tolar's house, he and Burke are arguing when Galen comes in with news of Dalton's arrest. Meanwhile, in the cage, Verdon suggests to Dalton that the others should take off without him. Then Tolar approaches. He begs the guards to see his son. I thought that was rather pathetic for a guy who was so gung-ho about honor of the games. But then Galen and Burke drop on top of the guards and release those prisoners. It was a trick. They don't get very far before another gorilla starts shooting at them. They hide behind a cart, and then they're attacked from behind. Tolar sacrifices himself to save the others. After taking a bullet in the gut, he grabs for Jason's gun, and the two struggle until it goes off once again. Both Jason and Tolar are dead. We join the four fugitives jogging down a road. They hear a horse and promptly hide in a ditch. Dalton goes out to meet the prefect, who says the games are over for good. They died with Tolar. He returns the computer disk and he disavows all knowledge of the two astronauts and Galen before he rides off. Dalton points the way for the three fugitives before they all part company.
This episode was a complete waste of time. Every ape knows that humans are incapable of caring about each other. They only know greed and violence. And once again, the gorilla sentries are depicted as fools who are unable to hit a target. At least Jason was able to stop one of them. But even he was overpowered by a human. Just another con meant to put down a race that is far superior to the humans. Once again, I say, whoever came up with these absurd lies needs to be executed.
I was originally reluctant to review this episode when I saw the title. I'm not much into TV episodes about gladiator games, to be honest.
Joey, you like movies about gladiators?
Thankfully, it was more about their quest for the computer disk than it was about the fighting. And there were no silly togas like John Saxon wore in the TV movie Strange New World. Speaking of costumes, I was somewhat surprised by the clothing of quite a few of the extras in the arena scene. Some of them looked as though they were filmed in their street clothes from 1974. And the hairstyles appeared to be untouched and very 1970s as well. Since the episode veered away from the final draft script so much, I had a difficult time figuring out who was supposed to be who. There were two gorillas, the guards that Galen and Burke dropped onto. One of them should have been stuntman actor Ron Stein. He had appeared as Turvo in the series opener, and he will appear again, playing various roles in 9 more episodes after this one. The other gorilla guard was likely stuntman Jim Stater. There's another gorilla who Prefect Barlow told to hold his fire in that final struggle over the gun. That's Eddie Fontaine, best known as Private Pete D'Angelo in 26 episodes of the 1960s series The Gallant Men. In 1980, this episode was used as the first half of the TV movie The Forgotten City of the Planet of the Apes, which was sold to syndication. Once again, I can't remember if I watched this episode 50 years ago. I guess I'll take a look at the third episode and see if it inspires me to continue the series. Look for that next time. For now, activate the buttons below to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, that also helps. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you'll know when I post my next video. I look forward to seeing all of you again on my next episode of Old Joe's Reminiscence.